Hello everybody. I'd just like to say how delighted I am to be the manager of Manchester United. I hope in the coming years that I bring the excitement that this club respected traditions expect and deserve.
I'm a dinosaur. I'm an absolute dinosaur. But what I am, I'm a winner.
He loves the game. He loves the game of football. He loves being manager. He loves being in charge. He loves the challenge. We made the best decision that could ever have happened in bringing Alex Ferguson to this club.
Bent forward. Here's Lee Martin. 1-0 to Manchester United. Alex Ferguson ends his way for significant silverware.
And the manager saving every vital second.
Bruce, yes! Yes for Manchester United! And Alex Ferguson can't contain himself, and that's totally understandable. It's been a phenomenal finish.
The timekeeping should be taken out of the referee's hands. They're just not competent enough to handle timekeeping in a game of that nature.
Well, he says, well, I'll buy you one. Swing bomb my stopwatch.
Sir Alex already making sure that the referee Kevin Friend is adding on the appropriate amount of minutes. Nicholas Anelka. Oh yes! Manchester United are the champions of Europe. For Sir Alex Ferguson, the dream becomes reality. Get the party started. United have caught Liverpool. United have won a record 19th league title. It's Sir Alex Ferguson's 12th, and he's achieved what he set out to do, knock Liverpool off their perch. Liverpool led United by 18 titles to 7. Remarkably, they've now been overtaken. It's a landslide, a 20th league title, head and shoulders above the rest.
I'm so proud of everything that's I've achieved. The highlight is definitely Barcelona for me.
Cleared, Geeks with a shot, Sheringham! Beckham, into Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it! Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
To do the treble, first of all, but the manner in which we did it and the atmosphere of the stadium that night and the number of fans there, that I always remember it was 94,000 there, but it was unbelievable. So that was a great moment.
Football, bloody hell. But they never give in, and that's the winner.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Chatting with Chatters on Footers TV. And today I've got a very special guest with me, the one and only Arunava Chaudhuri. A lot of us have been following what Arunava writes about football on his various social media extensions, and his blog, Arunava About Football, is one of the most widely followed football blogs here in India. And today we get a chance to spend a few minutes with the man himself. Welcome Arunava to the show. We're very glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Abhik.
So let us get down to brass tacks, Arunava, straight away. I know that you're very passionate about Indian football and you've always had this burning desire to contribute to Indian football in a way. So if I may ask you to expound on what is your take on Indian football currently, and where do you see Indian football shaping up in, say, the next decade or so?
Well, I think Indian football is at the crossroads. I think that's, simply to sum it up, and to use the words of Mr. Blatter, the sleeping giant has awoken. Sounds all very, very good, but at the moment we're not very, very clear in which way Indian football is going. You have the fight going on between the AFF and their marketing partners, IMG-Reliance, against the I-League clubs in regard to the start of the IPL-style football tournament on one side and the future of the I-League. On the other side, of course, the question marks behind the national team after not qualifying for the Challenge Cup next year, and youth development on one side good, the Indian under-16s winning the SAF under-16 tournament in Kathmandu, but on the other side it's not very, very clear where our youth development structure is going, and we've got a plan called Lakshya, which the technical director Rob Barn has put together, but on the other side, of course, there are the financial issues of the federations, the state associations, the districts, the clubs, where the question mark is, can that project or plan be implemented in India?
We all know that Indian football right now is going through a phase wherein we'll have a new development over the next few months with regard to IMG-Reliance's new proposed league. What is your take on that, Arunava? Do you think it has, the IMG-Reliance league has the credentials to bring about a positive change in Indian football?
Well, there are two sides of the coin or the story. On one side, of course, I'm a purist when it comes to football, so I prefer a pure I-League plus Federation Cup schedule in Indian football. But knowing the way Indian football has been run, you have on one side, of course, things like the Durand Cup, the IFA Shield, and other things which factor in. On the other side, you have to see that the I-League at the moment is a product which is not selling. No sponsors. Television is down to a bare minimum, so it's got its problems. So Indian football does not have the followers that actually football in India has. A lot of people are following EPL, La Liga, the Bundesliga, the Champions League, when the World Cup is on, when the Euros are on. So football interest is there, and I think that IMGR tournament, if it's the IPL style football tournament which might be coming, then it is something which could bring in, old aging stars, but those kind of people that people will want to see live at a football ground, and will create hopefully a new interest in Indian football, and hopefully will merge and gel somehow or the other with the I-League so that Indian football grows.
Fascinating opinions, Arunava, and you're sitting right now in one of the major powerhouses when it comes to football in Europe. If I may just invoke the football enthusiast in you, how does it feel to be surrounded by football of such high quality? And what do you think is the main difference that separates a nation like Germany from us Indians who are striving to reach that position?
Well, I mean, I'm born and brought up in Germany, so it's not a very special thing for me. It's a very usual thing. So, to grow up in a football culture, and football is part and parcel of our discussions day in, day out over here. So that's nothing special as such. I think the quality of football has improved over the last few years. Just sorry, my nose is giving me a little trouble. We have had an improvement in the quality of football in Germany. I think that is the big thing at the moment that we've had. The German national team at 2010, thereafter Bayern Munich playing Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League final. The steps that Germany took since 2000 to redevelop their youth development system, focus on the clubs to do the youth development along with the federation, with centers, local centers, regional centers, state centers, national centers. That has worked for German football very, very well. And I said it's not a thing that has happened overnight. It's a plan which was put in place. It took them 10 years to bring them results, and now you see the great footballers which Germany has and will have to produce. I mean, we're always talking about the likes of Götze or Müller or Reus, but think about the older generation of Schweinsteiger and Lahm, just not to forget them, but the younger ones, especially let's take Schalke with players like Julian Draxler, Max Meyer, and of course Leon Goretzka, all in their 17, 18, 19 age group. So it looks good, and what India can learn certainly is strategic plan, implement the plan, spend the money wisely, and the clubs along with the federation work towards one goal. I think that's what the AFF, the I-League, as well as IMG-Reliance can learn from the DFB, from the DFL, and from the German Bundesliga clubs.
I know this question must have been asked you a lot of times, Arunava, in interviews, and you must have written about it, and a lot of people might have asked you this, and mostly even from personal experience, and I know it tends to fall on deaf ears. But if I could request you to narrow down your recommendations to the AIFF in 3 points. Maybe you can enlarge the list depending on your discretion. But if I would ask you to name 3 things which you would want the AIFF to do, a wish list as such, because we know what happens in reality. But if a wish list were to come from your side of 3 points which the AIFF should work towards, what would those 3 points be?
Let me start off by saying the AFF gets a lot of stick, a lot of slag for what it does or what it rather not does. But if you look at the AFF now in 2013 and compare it with the AFF I have seen in the year 2000 or 2001, 2002. It's come a long, long way. I mean, in those days, you didn't have Football House. The General Secretary was sitting in a small office in his home state. The AFF was 3 or 4 people, actually. No one was paid. So we've come a long, long way on that front. So let's, give them credit for that. The 3 most important things will be certainly looking at the national team and youth development as one plan. Working out something with the I-League clubs so that the I-League clubs actually do their homework when it comes to youth development. It cannot be that the AFF is forced into creating its own regional centers, regional academies to develop talent. That should normally come through the club. So the boys go through a club system into feeding into a B team, into a senior team, and then, going on to play for the national teams in elite centers, in regional centers, where you pull boys together once in a while. Very, very crucial element. And I think also an element which I've faced has been very, very problematic is that India and Indian football needs to accept help from the outside world, which is coming from Indians abroad, born abroad, NRIs, PIOs, who generally want to help Indian football, who also bring a certain football knowledge, which is certainly lacking in India. And that is something which Indian football or India needs to accept, that on certain fronts, lack of knowledge is there, lack of organization and administration is there at all levels of Indian football. It might sound a little harsh, and certain people might not be happy to hear it, but the reality is accept help from abroad, from people who know what they do in football. Otherwise, Indian football will not develop.
Moving on from the talks about Indian football to something about you personally. You've been a football journalist for quite some time now, and you've also observed the many footballing cultures. So how does it feel to be a footballing journalist for anybody who might be wanting to take that up as a career option? Sports journalism for a fact. And what do you think are the positives and negatives that go along with it?
Well, one of the things that people don't realize is that it's a lot of work. I know that a lot of youngsters see, my blog or see my pictures on Facebook and think, hey, he's hanging around with a Bajrang Bhutia, or clicking pictures with a Schweinsteiger or other people. The other day I had a picture where I was just watching a match, not actually on work, in Bochum. There's a lot of work gone down towards that to achieve that, and I think that is one thing that you need to work hard. I think the positives are through football I can see, I can work in the sport that I love. First of all, I can see the world. I mean, that's an advantage which I have being based here in Germany. So I do travel a little bit for football across Europe. I've traveled to the Caribbean. I've traveled to the Middle East, of course, India as well. I've seen parts and corners of India which I would have never seen without football. So those are the positives. The negatives, of course, are that it's difficult times for football or journalism in general because of social media and other elements coming in. It's not very, very clear how the media will survive in its present form or format. So it's not always easy. So be open to new ideas, new thinking, but also very, very important is you need to understand the game to a certain level. Otherwise, just reporting about a game is very, very easy. But if you don't understand the game to a certain level, it will be difficult to make judgments about certain things which happen in the game on a small and larger scale.
I think the last point which you made was something which is very pertinent when it comes to media journalism, because it obviously should be a definite solid knowledge background about the game and its various entities. If I ask you about your favorite footballing memories, what have been the moments in football that have enthralled you, and if you can share some of your most choicest memories when it comes to the beautiful game.
Let me pick 5. I've got 4 or 5 which I find very, very interesting. I would always start with July 26, 2000 at West Bromwich Albion at the Hawthorns. I wrote about it the other day on my blog as well, where India was playing a friendly match against West Brom. West Brom at that time were in the old First Division, which is now the Championship, and they at the end of the season got promoted with Fulham. We played on a Saturday against Fulham. We lost 2-0, and then we went to West Brom, and everyone was scared. If Fulham had played to its potential, we would have lost 5-6-0. But then we are there, officially about 11,000 people in the stadium. About 90% of them are Indians. You're hearing the dhols, you're hearing the drums. It's an atmosphere I've never experienced again at an India match. India played great. We were better than West Brom. Baichung had a flying header. Which should have gone in, and that was my first real experience with the national team, being part of the national team over there in England. Second would always be, and I'm doing it in a chronological order.
Yep.
Would be September 8th, 2004, India versus Japan. I was organizing the international media side of things for the IFA/AFF, and it was a great thing. I mean, 1 month involved in that project, and I think till date, most probably, it was the best organized international football match in India, because a dedicated team of 53 people, none of them paid. That's a very, very important thing. So there was enthusiasm, idealism, everything which is positive about working for a project. And then you had the floodlights going off at halftime, which was a crazy thing, and India lost 4-0, but it was great to be there, to be part of that thing, and see how hard India works. And we thought the good times were coming. That was sort of the second. The third one would always be the 2006 World Cup here in Germany. I think that's something which I really enjoyed. I rekindled my love and passion for this country during that tournament. It was a great tournament, 1 month, traveling around every day. Luckily, I could sometimes sleep at home in my own bed. That's something which I always prefer, rather than sleeping in hotels, which does sometimes happen to be like 150, 200 days a year. That was the third one. The fourth one will always be May 27th, 2008 in Kolkata, when India hosted Bayern Munich, Oliver Kahn's final match against Mohun Bagan. And I remember I was walking through the Salt Lake Stadium before the match, 125,000 people in that stadium, all of them cheering Oliver Kahn. It was, Kolkata has great atmospheres for the derby, but that was even more special because all of the fans were for one team, for one player even. That was also a special moment. And then I will go always India taking part in the Asian Cup in Qatar in 2011. India playing against Bahrain, and Gauram Singh equalizing for India. And even us journalists got berserk. I had a senior journalist from England beside me who said, "You are not jumping up, Arunava, if anything India scores a goal." He said it before every match. And then when India scored, even that guy got up and clapped for India. And it was, that was the proudest moment I at least felt as an Indian football fan, as an Indian football enthusiast. That 1-1 which we got, and in a match where we, against a team which just a few years earlier missed out unluckily on playing in the World Cup. Back to that day in Doha at the Al Saad Stadium, it was great. And then later on, of course, Renardi's Frank Lampard goal, which in the end Sunil Chhetri pushes in. Okay, we lose 5-2. We lost 4-0 against Australia. We lost 4-1 against South Korea. But we came out of that tournament with our heads held high, and a lot of respect for India, knowing that, of course, in that group we were by far the weakest team. And those would be the 5 special moments in my journalist football management career over the last 15 years.
I think that is a great set of memories that we've shared with us, and it's I think it's great that we can get a peek into what it a day in the life of a football journalist is when he experiences all these emotions. Coming to the last segment of the show, the thing which is right now on everybody's lips, and that is the transfer market. And I would want to take your personal opinion on what is going to happen in the transfer market, and how are the teams shaping up. And if you can go and if you can take the major leagues one by one, England, obviously there has been a major upheaval with all the managers at all the top clubs. Manchester United has got David Moyes. You've got Pellegrini coming in at Manchester City. You've got Liverpool, who might they've not challenged for the title so far, but with some smart signings, they might step it up a bit. And Tottenham Hotspur have considerably enhanced their squad. Chelsea, of course, has seen the special one return. So this all sets it up for a big party carnival. So what is your take on how things might go down in the EPL?
I was in London a couple of weeks back, so I read a very interesting article in one of those newspapers in the UK, where they actually questioned why the top stars are not coming to the EPL this summer. So, they were surprised that a Falcao went to Monaco, that Cavani went to Paris Saint-Germain, that a Thiago Alcantara went to Bayern, Henrik Mkhitaryan choosing Dortmund over Liverpool. So there's been a lot of chit chat about that, and I felt from the outside, I'm someone who follows the EPL from the outside. I'm more closer to the Bundesliga. Is that the EPL actually has not been able to do that A-grade transfers that they would like to do. I mean, the chit chat at the moment today is actually that Manchester United are not trying to bring Fabregas in, but actually to get Cristiano Ronaldo in, and that is something which is linked maybe to Gareth Bale deal from Tottenham, which might mean that Wayne Rooney leaves. So I think we still have a few days to go until the end of the month. So I think the English Premier League still has got its big transfers maybe to come. So far, I would actually say that the biggest transfer is Jose Mourinho coming back. I think I've got a few friends at Chelsea and Chelsea fans, and they are very, very happy to have the special one back. And I've recently spoken to David Moyes' brother Kenny, who I know. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure, and Alex Ferguson was the king, the boss of United, and that's a big change. So it could be interesting, but I'd be interested to see that how smaller clubs like Swansea do. I like the way they played football last season. So Michel Laudrup brings that special edge to them, and maybe there's another team which does surprise us. And Ian Holloway is back as well. I just love when I see his press conference and statements. You never know what he's going to say. I remember that rant regarding Qatar 2022. How can they actually hand a World Cup into the desert? So there's a lot of elements which I find very, very interesting, and I think we can look forward to.
Moving on to the La Liga, recently Tito Villanova stepped down, of course, due to his cancer relapse, and Barcelona have not had the best of years, even though they won the league title last year, because they obviously got thrashed in the Champions League. And with Real Madrid having made a lot of reinforcements this summer, they're looking to add Gareth Bale. They've already bought an Isco, and they've got an experienced manager in Carlo Ancelotti. A lot of people do not give him the credit that he deserves, but he has won the Champions League with the likes of AC Milan before, so he is by no means a novice at the big stage. And obviously you've got Gerardo Martino coming in for Barcelona. How does the Spanish League look to you at the moment? Because we've seen them subdued in the Champions League by the German teams. So do you think they can go a notch up this year and maybe...
Subdued is putting it very, very nicely. I think they were demolished to some extent in the Champions League. No, but if we look at the Spanish League, I think, yes, it's again the fight of the big two. Atletico has done some clever movements, I think, by selling Falcao for a very, very heavy price. If David Villa stays injury-free, it could be a very, very handy striker to give him 15, 20 goals. Barcelona is going to be, if Neymar can settle into the team and be a 1B to Lionel Messi, because Messi still is a different class. Now you've got an Argentinian coming in as a manager, Villanova leaving, so there's a lot of upheaval after the Confederations Cup, a lot of questions being asked about Xavi. Do they have actually a replacement? I fear for Barcelona that most probably their best replacement opportunity in Thiago Alcantara has been sold on to Bayern Munich. So it will be interesting to see what happens at Barca. Real Madrid, crazy spenders so far. I mean, spending 30-35 million on those youngsters. Of course, they're European champions in the under-21 category in Isco and the others. And I agree totally with you that Ancelotti is a big coach. But the question now is, with English media reporting that Manchester United are doing that audacious bid to get Cristiano Ronaldo back, it would be interesting to see what happens if they're actually going to be selling Ronaldo or keeping him, and what happens to Gareth Bale, who's nearly there. But 120 million euros for Gareth Bale, I don't know. I always feel that especially Spanish and English clubs overspend on transfers, and if you look at that, Alcantara was bought for only 25 by Bayern. Mkhitaryan was bought for 27.5 million euros. 120 million euros to me is way, way over the top.
Moving on to your favorite league now, the Bundesliga. Bayern Munich smashing all sorts of records last year, and there have been fans who have questioned, why did Jupp Heynckes, what did Jupp Heynckes do wrong? Because he won everything last year, and he's been replaced by Pep Guardiola. So that way Bayern have now a coach who follows a little philosophy, which is closer to his own, a more fluid passing style of play. And with Borussia Dortmund also being a major European force last year, and we got a little taste of what is about to happen when Borussia Dortmund beat Bayern Munich 4-2. So I think that was a great advert for the Bundesliga. So the Bundesliga by far has looked to be the most stable league out of all, because the way they have sponsored their ticket, the way they've set up their ticket pricing, the way they attract large crowds, the way they're getting the revenues into it. So what do you think about the Bundesliga? It's going to be an interesting season, this one.
Well, I think, first of all, I think the biggest signing of Europe in the summer was Pep Guardiola going to Bayern Munich. But I think it was clear from the onset of last season that Heinkes was looking to end his career this summer. So Bayern Munich were on the lookout for options. And if a manager like Guardiola is on the market, a club like Bayern Munich has to react. And I think Guardiola brings to the table a lot of things that Bayern Munich would like to do. I mean, you have to see that Bayern Munich is the most financially solid club in Europe. They're the only club to have made profits over the plus 20 years. Everyone else at that top level has got depth where every other company would be shut down. So that is there. But I think even looking at an Indian context, Bayern Munich has done the most in regard to being linked to India. 5 times teams have come to India. They've done their youth cups, have done massive donations for social causes in India as well. But I think Guardiola now being there gives them a media hype, which I haven't seen. I was in India at the time when the news came out that Guardiola is signing for Bayern Munich. There was more coverage on Bayern Munich than on all other football teams over a 3-day period. So that is very, very good. Clever signings as well. Mario Götze is the best young talent that we have in Germany. He could be the next one to fill the shoes of the Messi or Ronaldos, I think. Thiago Alcantara on the other side, another one, a very, very good prospect. And I think for him, a wise move to come to Munich than to go to England, because I think that German football has more similarities to Spain now than English. English is still a lot of, it's a physical game. It's 90 minutes up and down, but it's still not that technical as La Liga, Bundesliga, or Serie A, or even the French Ligue A. So I think those are wise moves. But on the other side, Dortmund, very, very good transfer moves. Of course, they lost Götze. They kept on to Lewandowski, which I think is a wise move to do, to keep him for another year. But bringing in Mkhitaryan, who was not only sought after by Dortmund, but also by Liverpool, Aubameyang from Saint-Etienne, and Socrates from Werder Bremen, gives them the depth. There are 1 or 2 transfers which might happen. They've been speaking to a South Korean youngster who they've been thinking of bringing in. And of course, the chatters that Shinji Kagawa is not happy at Manchester United and would love to return, even though it looks unlikely this summer. But it could be a topic next year if once Lewandowski leaves, that the lost son might be coming back to Dortmund.
I would like to talk about a player in particular here, because who has actually impressed me personally and has actually impressed a lot of football fans. And he's not that talked about, but his contribution to Borussia Dortmund and the style of football they play, Ilkay Gundogan, I think is somebody who has come through in the Champions League. And his style of play as a buccaneering midfielder who has tremendous amounts of stamina, runs up and down the pitch, puts in his all. Do you think he's somebody who could be one of the many stars, but one of the more defining stars of the Bundesliga this season?
I think Ilkay Gundogan has proven what a quality player he can be. I mean, you have to think that at Schalke he was thought not to be good enough, and then was sold on to Nuremberg, and via Nuremberg came back into the Ruhr Valley to sign for Dortmund. So that's an interesting development. And the question will be that if Gundogan can actually move up. I mean, a lot of people are saying that he could be challenging Bastian Schweinsteiger for his place in the German national team as well. He has taken away places which were clear for Kehl and Sven Bender in defensive midfield, but Dortmund the other day used him as a more attacking player due to not having options in a more Mario Götze position, and he was playing well as in that number 10 position. So yes, but I would hope that he stays on in the Bundesliga and does not make the mistakes that other people like Nuri Sahin have made. He moved on to Real Madrid, couldn't cut it there, went to Liverpool, couldn't cut it there, is back at the club, but still hasn't gotten to the level he is. So you've got some very, very interesting talent. The same thing seems to be happening to Kagawa as well. So there are certain players who are used to that style of Jurgen Klopp, which is very, very hard pressing game, a lot of pace, a lot of direct balls. And to some extent, Jupp Heynckes has copied a few elements and taken it into his team and made Bayern Munich into that deadly unit that they were last season. So I'm looking forward to a very, very interesting season. And we should not forget Schalke, who've done some very, very clever signings as well. I mean, they have in Klaas-Jan Huntelaar a very, very good striker, and Julian Draxler, the next Götze, as they say. But I've mentioned them earlier, Goretzka, who they've signed from Bochum. The guy is 18, has played a full season in the second Bundesliga, and Max Meyer, 17-year-old, most probably even better than Julian Draxler. I think we're going to see a lot of them. But then, on the other side, you've got Bayer Leverkusen, done a lot of interesting signings, lost André Schürrle for a fee, which I thought, even again, an EPL club, I think paying too much for a player. Bring in Heung-min Son from Hamburg, who's done quite well in the Bundesliga over the last couple of years. Bringing in some experience as well with Spahic in defense from Sevilla. So you've got very, very interesting teams. And Freiburg, of course, could be very interesting to watch. They will be playing a Europa League. The big surprise last season, of course, that they finished so high up the table with their refreshing football. A lot of changes in their squad, but you never know. Frankfurt was the surprise team last year as the promoted team. So let's wait and see who could be this year.
Moving on to the Italian league now, and Juventus have had a very easy stroll to the title, if I may say so. The last year they've bought in two quality strikers in Carlos Tevez, and they bought in Fernando Llorente. Their two main signings this season. Do you see anybody catching up with Juventus? Because Inter Milan, I think ever since Jose Mourinho's left, are looking like a spent force. They do have a couple of very promising youngsters, but they're not at the level at which the famed Inter Milan, used to operate. And again, AC Milan fielding a relatively, young side. I think there is, ever since they sold Thiago to PSG, they've been lacking a bit in defense as well. So does it look like a one-horse race to the title for you this season, the Italian league?
I think you're utterly right about the two Milan clubs. I think Inter depends on if the Moratti family can sell quick enough to that Asian Mughal from Indonesia. And if that happens within the transfer period, you might see some late buying of stars. AC Milan is finally doing a generational shift. I mean, they've been always one of the oldest teams in Europe. So that might take a time. I was not very impressed with how they played in the Audi Cup against Manchester City, against Sao Paulo. I think Napoli will be interesting to see. I mean, they sold Cavani, but brought Higuain in and did some other clever signings as well. And Fiorentina as well. They sold Jovetic for a lot of money, brought in Mario Gomez, some other good youngsters. So they might be maybe the challengers for Juventus, maybe even Lazio, Rome, depending on who they have and they bring in. I mean, Klose has been exceptional for them in the last 2 years since he's left Bayern Munich. So there might be challenges, but even Juve has sold off a lot of players, a lot of sort of bench players, but Italian internationals who've gone in, like Giaccherini signing for something like Sunderland. So it will be interesting to see how the Serie A shapes up, and I hope that the racism issue, which has been cropping up over the last 6-7 months, has cropped up the other day as well again, doesn't crop up and creates more problems for the Italian game.
When I talk to a lot of fans, they tell me that when we talk about the French league, Arunava in general, it's been often mooted that the French league is a selling league, because they often the best talent that the French league produces doesn't spend enough time there. If you look at Eden Hazard, he's come to Chelsea, and his brother has also followed him out there, and a lot of French players now signing for Newcastle. There's this trend that Newcastle is snapping up a lot of French players, with them making a move to the Premier League. So for the French league to prosper, beside PSG, who've spent a huge amount of money and brought in Cavani, and you've bought in Thiago Silva last year, they bought in Ibrahimovic. So they obviously are a good unit because of the amount they've spent. But for the lesser known clubs, if they aren't able to hang on to their talent, if they aren't able to hang on to the players that will be the future, do you see the French league becoming one of the more potent leagues in Europe, so to say, wherein a preferred football destination for quality players to go to?
I mean, France has been always there or not there. I think, their big breakthrough for them was, of course, winning the World Cup in 1998. So, there was infrastructure development and things moved up. Olympique Lyon was, of course, for many, many years, the team to beat, and they had some of the best talent with them. Of course, PSG came around with foreign investment. I think a club which a lot of people don't mention is AS Monaco, who've, of course, brought in Radamel Falcao, Moutinho, other people as well. They could be very interesting to see how they do. And of course, Lyon, Marseille is there. Olympique Marseille is, always a team who's been there. So they have a few teams. But of course, yes, the French league has been more of a selling league than a buying league. But it's, it's an interesting thing that a lot of Belgian players or players who played in the Belgium league move into France, and then from France move on maybe to the Premiership. Arsene Wenger has always been a big buyer in his home country. For Arsenal, the Spanish have always looked towards France. Clubs on the western border in Germany look towards France as well. So yes, it has happened, but it's also been interesting to see movements. A lot of players, for example, in East Germany, for example, I saw the other day Dynamo Dresden play, have got a lot of French players. So the outwards movement is still there, but what is happening is France is again has always been a very, very good development country, like the Netherlands, where you have a lot of players coming through the system. Belgium, of course, the team with the young talent at the moment. But their leagues, the countries are not big enough to really sustain that. That's changing at the moment. The question is if this PSG-Monaco rivalry, which will be started this season, will be similar to like Barcelona, Real Madrid in Spain, or if it's more going to be a multi-team challenge like in the Bundesliga or the EPL, where 4 or 5 teams really fight for the title. So I think more eyeballs will be on the French league, and certainly interesting to watch how it develops.
And finally, we'll come back to our own country and look at what has been happening at the football scene locally here. IMG-Reliance needed a certain amount of players in order to make their tournament happen. Obviously, the I-League clubs haven't been, that accommodating, and they've said they'll not allow any of their players to go on loan. But the big boost they got recently was that they can get the entire Pile and Arrow squad at their disposal, and they've said they've nearly completed their quota of players. But do you think this bitter feud wherein the players from the I-League, obviously they would want to reap some of the financial benefits that IMGR are bringing to the table. So you think it's going to sort itself out, that players from the I-League clubs are going to move on and play in the IMGR tournament?
You said it yourself. I think if you look at the numbers which are out in the open at the moment, then IMG is just short by a few players of fulfilling according to that. But I said no one. That's my biggest worry, that no one's actually officially ever come out and said, listen, there will be 10 players or 15 players or 50 Indian players per team. No one's come out with the figures, but everyone is keep on guessing. So what I've said generally about the IMGR tournament is let them come out with facts. Let us wait for the facts to come out, and then once the facts are out, I think then we can discuss it and then see what is good, what is bad. On the players front, I think they haven't done too badly. I've seen a couple of lists of players. They've got international top class players like Subroto, like Mangi, like Nabi in there, so it's not bad. And Pile and Arrows for those boys, if those international stars come in, that's going to be a top class exposure for that lot. So I think it's for them a win situation. I know a lot of I-League players would like to play that tournament. Some of them actually signed contracts under the notion that I-League clubs will release the players. So let's wait and see what happens. And I said, I don't think there are too many players who are needed for that league anymore, or tournament, sorry. It's a tournament, it's not a league, what they're saying. And they will be found here or there, certainly. And, they've got the quota for under 23 players, so I think it'll sort itself out at some stage.
Do you think it will be a little difficult being a player who is signed for the IMGR tournament right now? Because on one hand, they'll of course get to play in the tournament, but with the I-League clubs taking such a strict stance over, releasing, even accepting players who have signed up for this tournament to come and play for any of their clubs. This might create a bit of problem when it comes to national selection, because obviously a player would want to play throughout the year, apart from the IMGR tournament. So what might be going through the minds of such players? As in, we obviously need to give some thought to the players who are involved in this as well.
Two things. One thing is IMGR, from what I've heard, is guaranteeing their salary for a whole season, and there are numerous clubs last season who've not paid the whole salary. So there's a financial issue to it. On a footballing front, I think Sunil said it in a television show, playing 70 days of football in a year doesn't make sense.
Yep.
He's right and he's wrong. I mean, the tournament is 17 days, but you're not going to play 70 days. So you might play 14 or 15 matches. I think that there will be options for players to maybe go abroad, train elsewhere, opportunities which are not there at the moment because their salaries are guaranteed. So I think there might be avenues for them which we're not even thinking about at the moment, which might open up for them, which might be in the interest of Indian football as such, and give the boys some different kind of exposure which they're not getting at the moment. So I think we need to wait and watch and see what happens. As said, I think Praful Patel has said it yesterday at the executive committee and afterwards as well. A solution needs to be found, and the four AIFF vice presidents needs to find a solution. And I think once that is found, the talent base which is available with the IMG-Reliance League is not bad, and I think certain clubs would be happy to have those players.
Coming to the last question of the show, Arunava, any advice for us, as with all the experience that you have when it comes to football? So we might be a young group of youngsters who are trying to emulate you on some level in our own small way. So what advice will you have for football enthusiasts like us who would want people to tune in and who would want people to express opinions on this platform?
First of all, it's good that you have the platform. I think that's very, very important, that it has to be multimedia, social media. I think we have to thank Google for creating something like Hangout, where you can actually record such shows and put them out on YouTube, which are very easy to do and which are to no cost to us. I think that's very, very important. Important is, follow your passion. As a journalist, I think it's very, very important that you need to remember you're part of the journalist trade now in some sort of form or way. You're not a newspaper journalist, or you're not a television or radio guy, but you're part of journalism in some sort of form or way. So always follow the guidelines of journalism. Report the facts. I know gossip in football, especially in the transfer period, is a lovely thing to have, but stick to the facts, report the facts, and cross-check facts if facts are true, and then grow, and wish you all the best, and we all can see a more successful football in India in the near future.
Very nicely put by Arunava at the very end. We would like to thank him profusely for sparing his time to be on the show with us. It was very insightful. It was a very insightful discussion, Arunava, talking to you, and I think we are a little wiser after the discussion when it comes to picking your brain, especially with all the nuggets that you have about football stored away in the head of yours. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to have your company once again, maybe in the near future.
Thank you for having me, and it was real fun to do this with you, and yeah, certainly we'll repeat it in the near future. Thank you very much.
So that's about all the time we have in this edition of Chatting for Chatters with our guest Arunava Chaudhuri. We'll be back very soon with another segment. Till then, be good and stay tuned to more football coming up very shortly.